Before you got pregnant, your uterus was the size of a small pear and weighed about 60 grams. By the time your baby arrives, it's the size of a watermelon and weighs over a kilogram. But the size change is honestly the least interesting thing it does. Here's exactly what happens, stage by stage. Every month, whether or not you're trying to conceive, your uterus prepares. The inner lining, called the endometrium, thickens, fills with blood vessels, and starts producing nutrients. It's essentially setting a table in case a fertilized egg shows up. If it does, the fertilized egg sends out a chemical signal almost immediately, a hormone called hCG. That signal tells your uterus one thing: don't clear the table. Don't shed the lining. Something is coming. This is what stops your period. Here's the part most people don't realize. By the time you're late enough to take a pregnancy test, your uterus has already been responding to this pregnancy for weeks. It knew before you did. Around 6 to 10 days after fertilization, the embryo, at this point a tiny ball of cells, travels down the fallopian tube and tries to attach to the uterine wall. This is called implantation. Tiny structures grow on the surface of the lining during a very specific window, sometimes as short as 24-48 hours, designed specifically to help the embryo grip and attach. If the embryo arrives outside that window, implantation fails. Once attached, the embryo starts burrowing into the lining's blood vessels to tap into your blood supply. And here's the thing: your immune system would normally attack anything with foreign DNA trying to do that. Half of your baby's DNA comes from the father. By every normal rule, your body should reject it. But the uterus switches off that immune response locally, in exactly the right place, at exactly the right time. It protects the embryo from your own defenses, deliberately, every single time. By week 6, the uterus has already doubled in size. Even though from the outside, nothing looks different yet. Inside, blood vessels are multiplying fast to feed the growing placenta. Blood flow to the uterus increases. In these early weeks, your body is investing heavily in this pregnancy before there's even a visible bump to show for it. The muscle wall of the uterus is also thickening, building strength it's going to need later. By week 8, the uterus is already heavier, more muscular, and more blood-rich than it's ever been. By week 12, the uterus has grown large enough to rise out of the pelvis. Your midwife can now feel the top of it above your pubic bone during examination. From here, it grows about 1 centimeter per week, which is why fundal height measurements track so closely to gestational age. Your midwife isn't guessing. They're measuring how fast the uterus is expanding in real time. By week 20, it reaches your navel. By week 28, it's sitting between your navel and your rib cage. Your intestines have been pushed to the sides. Your stomach has been nudged upward, which is why heartburn gets worse as pregnancy progresses. The uterus is physically squeezing it. The individual muscle cells inside the uterus actually grow up to 10 times their original length, and new muscle cells are being produced at the same time. So the uterus is simultaneously growing new muscle and stretching existing muscle, building itself bigger while getting stronger. No other organ in the human body does this. Nothing engineered by humans comes close. And from around week 20, the uterus starts practicing contractions, called Braxton Hicks. Most women don't feel them yet at this stage, but the uterus has already started rehearsing. By week 36, your uterus has expanded to roughly 500 times its original volume. It now fills most of your abdominal cavity, pushing your diaphragm upward by about 4 centimeters, which is why breathing feels like hard work until the baby drops. Between week 36 and 38, the baby's head descends into the pelvis. When this happens, the uterus shifts slightly forward and downward. Breathing gets easier almost overnight. Pelvic pressure takes over instead. At the same time, the cervix, the bottom opening of the uterus, starts changing. For 9 months, it's been sealed shut, firm as the tip of your nose. Now it starts softening, eventually becoming as soft as your earlobe, then your lip. The collagen fibers holding it closed start breaking down. It shortens. It may start to open slightly. Most women feel absolutely nothing while this is happening. Their uterus is quietly dismantling its own seal, on its own schedule, getting ready for what comes next. If you're finding out things you've never heard of, subscribe. There's a full series covering every stage of pregnancy on this channel. Labor starts when a hormone called oxytocin triggers a uterus to contract in a coordinated, rhythmic pattern. The uterus has been building to this for months. Now it executes. Here's what's actually happening during contraction. The upper part of the uterine muscle pulls upward and inward, dragging the lower part open as it does. The cervix, already softened, responds by opening further with each contraction. The baby isn't just being pushed down. The uterus is actively remodeling its own shape around the baby, tightening from above and opening below simultaneously. To deliver vaginally, the cervix needs to open from completely closed to 10 centimeters, roughly the diameter of a large orange. Each contraction moves it a little further. During the final phase of labor before pushing, contractions come every 2 to 3 minutes and last up to 90 seconds each. The uterus at this point is working harder than almost any other muscle in the human body works under any other circumstances. And it doesn't fail. The moment your baby is born, your uterus starts contracting again immediately. And this part is just as important as delivery itself. The placenta has been attached to the inside of the uterine wall for 9 months. Where it was attached is now an open wound roughly the size of a dinner plate. If the uterus didn't clamp down hard and fast, the blood loss would be dangerous. Within minutes of your baby arriving, the uterus contracts firmly enough to compress its own blood vessels and seal that wound. The placenta then separates and delivers. This is a third stage of labor, the part that happens after the baby. Skin-to-skin contact with your baby immediately after birth isn't just about bonding. When you hold your baby skin-to-skin and start breastfeeding, your brain releases oxytocin, and that oxytocin drives uterine contractions. Your baby, just by being held against you, is actively helping your uterus recover. That connection is biological, not just emotional. Most first-time moms are surprised by what happens to their bodies in the weeks after birth, because nobody really explains it clearly beforehand. Immediately after delivery, your uterus weighs about 1 kilogram and sits level with your navel. Over the next 6 to 8 weeks, it shrinks back towards pre-pregnancy size, a process called involution. You'll likely feel this happening, especially in the first few days. After pains, cramping sensations, often strongest during breastfeeding, are your uterus contracting as it shrinks. They can be surprisingly strong, particularly after a second or third baby. By day 10 after birth, the uterus has dropped below your pubic bone and is no longer feelable from outside. By 6 weeks, it's close to its original 60 grams. During this process, the inner lining sheds gradually as lochia, the postpartum discharge that continues for up to 6 weeks. This is the uterus cleaning and rebuilding its inner surface completely, restoring to a state where it could, if needed, carry another pregnancy. Think about what that means. The same organ that spent 9 months stretching to 500 times its original volume, generated enough force to deliver a baby, sealed a dinner plate-sized wound without stitches, quietly returns to its original size in 6 weeks. From the 24-hour window when implantation either happens or it doesn't, to the silent cervical changes at week 36, to the 6-week rebuild after birth, your uterus runs one of the most precisely timed biological programs in existence. Most of it happens without a single symptom you'd notice on your own, which is why every appointment, every scan, every blood pressure check your midwife runs matters. Not because something is likely wrong, but because a process this precise deserves to be monitored by someone qualified to catch it when anything shifts. Keep your appointments. Your uterus is doing its part. Make sure your care team can do theirs.